So now that we're doing it digitally, I'm having you, do it so that you can see the difference in the colors, what they look like on the screen. They make a simulation of the opacity of CMY colors. So we're going to do an RGB wheel and we're going to do a CMY wheel. And when you do the CMY wheel, you're going to go back into CMY in the color palette and mix them, or by either typing in the numbers or pulling the sliders. So you're going to change it again back to CMYK, and you're going to mix these colors. And I give you the recipes. So I want you, what I put on .ed are exactly what I want, how I want you to mix them. I don't want you to do it by eye. I want you to do it with the numbers this time, now that we're doing it on the screen. So it's very interesting because as you move around the screen, you're going to see the colors change, and you'll realize that you're just adding 50 or taking away 50 as you move around the screen. So it actually makes a lot of sense in terms of what's in the colors as you create the color wheel. And it's a really good exercise that way. So you're gonna create a CMY wheel this way. Now, I drew these, and I'm gonna create a wheel for you so you can see me do it next. I'm gonna slowly create one so that you can see the process of actually creating the wheel, because we have a few people in here who I think it would make them feel more secure to actually see me do it. So I'm going to create a wheel, and then you're going to be making a color value correlation chart. It looks like this. And what this shows is the values. Again, I was going over this in my lecture, the values that colors have. So this is a 9-step, whereas all the other skills I'm going to have you do are 11-step. But I created these colors, and in this one, you may have to do a little bit of adjusting to make it actually turn into the, so that you can actually see the value of these colors. And then you're going to do a gray value, and we've already done that. We've already painted it actually, but because I think it'll be good for you, you're going to redo it again. This time you're going to make a gray value scale by using the blend tool in Illustrator. And then you're going to create 3 other scales. And these scales, as you can see, are CMY. So what are these scales? I call this the gray value scale, and I call these the chromatic value scale. So actually, this should say chromatic. So it's in Illustrator, so I can just change it right now. There. So I created a cyan one, a magenta, and a yellow one. Do you notice something about these? Oops. Oh. Anything that you can say about these? I mean, people did not, yesterday when I was teaching this, they tried to do it and they made the mistakes that I thought they were going to make. Notice that these all are mixed with white, just the way you did the grayscale. So all of these had white in them, right? All of these had black in them. So you went from white and you were mixing a little teeny bit of black, 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 black. Oh no, it keeps telling me that it crashed, but it's still up, so it's not crashed. And then you went and you started mixing black in. Well, actually, that's what you're doing with these colors, except you're going to put the real color, the 100% cyan, 100% magenta, or 100% yellow, at the right place in the value scale. Otherwise, it won't look right. And the way you can test it actually is by selecting it, the whole thing. I'm going to select the whole thing. And then you go to Edit Colors. And you go to Edit Colors under Edit. And you can convert to grayscale. And I don't necessarily want you to do this, but it's a really fun thing to try, because you can actually see whether your chromatic scales look like the grayscale, and they should. Each one should look right. So if you put the real color at the wrong place in these, it won't look like the grayscale when you turn it into gray. Now, Illustrator doesn't have a grayscale mode, so it won't actually print in grayscale anyway. So I just put it back. I just did Command Z and I put it back again so you could see. But I'm going to show you how to do a scale, and you might want to try it. We're going to do one of these, or we're going to do all of them maybe, so that you can see how to make this particular one, because you can't do it with the blend tool from the white to the black with the magenta in the middle. It won't let you. You have to do it in 2 steps. So you do white to the color, and then you expand and ungroup that, and then you do the color to black. But you have to expand and ungroup before you can do the second part. So with all of the other scales, you're going to do a complementary set of scales with CMYK again. You're doing all of your scales and the color, the CMYK color wheel and the value correlation chart. You're going to do all of that. And I put the project sheet also into .ed, okay? So you will want that because it tells you, it names all the scales that you're going to have to do. And then you're going to send the group to me, okay? So these are the complementary scales. Again, what do you see at the end? C, cyan, magenta, and yellow. So CMY, and it goes to its complement. And what do you notice here? If I turn off the guides, I forget what the shortcut for that is. But if you turn off the guides, what do you notice with this complementary scales?
All the center points are the same?
Yeah, exactly. All the center swatches are the same. So what this teaches us is that when you mix complements, it's always the same 3 colors in the middle. And the reason for that is that when you mix complements, you're actually mixing all 3 primaries together, if they are true complements. And what if you thought that this scale, for instance, wasn't so good? And I'm going to ungroup it because when I centered it, I'd always pull a vertical and a horizontal axis so that I can treat this like a group. So I have my guides and I lock the guides or I turn them off, and then I select the whole thing so that I can center it using the guides. So when I turn back my guides, if I turn my guides back on now, it's Command semicolon is what it is. When I turn my guides back on, you see that I centered the group right on the page by using the guides, the vertical and the horizontal guides. I also pulled a guide from the left and pulled one down 1 inch to put my title. So I'm interested in your making it look attractive, just the way I would have been interested in your doing that if you had painted it. Does that make sense? So Devin was correct that the center looks the same, but I may have had to adjust it a tiny bit. I didn't. I think that these are all the true colors of the color wheel, actually. But watch, I'll just show you that if you thought you had to adjust this, let's say that this looked a little red to you and you wanted to take some of the magenta out of the end one. Well, you ungroup these, and then you can actually choose, even though this is a unified blend, you can just click on one and click on the other. I'll be showing you that in a minute, and you can make a blend that way. You don't have to do any intermediary steps when you do the complementary and the analogous scales, because you're not putting anything in the middle. You're just going right from one end to the other. Even if that's the case, it's still a grouped, it's called it's an integrated, what do you call, interactive group. Devin, you're major, interactive group. And so there's no way that you can select in the middle here without expanding and ungrouping it. But you could select an end one because remember that the white selection tool selects within groups. So I'm looking at it and it happens to be, just as the color wheel showed us, 100, 100, the color that is opposite cyan. But let's say you thought this looked a little red. Watch what happens when I actually modify the amount of a color. The whole thing changes. Watch. Did you see it change? So I just want you to know, this is when it's grouped with the blend tool, which is right here. It's the little black square going to the front round white circle. So it's right next to the eyedropper and right under the blend tool. It's right under the gradient tool. It's called the blend tool. That's what you'll be using to do all your scales. So this becomes an interactive blend. And the whole thing changes if you change an end color. I just wanted to show you that. But you know, really for the most part, if you do the colors with the recipes that are on the color wheel, colors that are right opposite each other, all the middle ones should look the same because actually they're all three colors. So it makes sense. So this probably should say 100, 100, 100 if I click on a middle one or something like that. So the only thing is I have to expand and ungroup it to be able to see that middle one. I can do that. So I'll go to Object, Expand, and it's going to give you, it's going to have object and fill checked. You can say, okay. And now it expanded it, but it's still a group. Oh no, it's not a group. That's interesting. I thought it was. Anyway, so now if I click on middle one, notice it says 50, 50, 50. So each one of these middle ones should actually say that. Do you want to see me do it? Or do you believe me? All right, I'll just assume that you believe me since nobody said anything. Let me see if I can see everybody else. All right, anyway, these middle ones will look the same when you do this part of it, okay? With those, these are complementary scales. Then you're gonna do, you're gonna do a analogous group. And that can be, you start again with CMY and you can go in any direction, to the right or the left on the color wheel. And so you make 3 analogous ones. And they look more similar because you're going to a color next to or one over from the color. So it's going to be much more soothing. You're not going to get that neutral brown in the middle because you're not mixing across the color wheel. You're not mixing its complement. You're simply mixing one that's right next to it. So those are called analogous. And I'll be sending you a sheet of meanings about colors, okay? That we kind of go over in class when I'm teaching this with, you know, face-to-face class, but I'll send it to you and put it onto .ed as well. It comes out of a textbook. So you basically have analogous, you have complementary to make, and you're going to have the gray value and the chromatic value scales to make. And you're going to have the this chart and the 2 color wheels. That's 6 different documents. And no, you can't do it in the same document. I tried that, and then all of a sudden I realized that I want you to do a RGB wheel. The problem with putting it all into layers in the same document is that you won't be able to make a document with a different color mode. So you have to do it as 6 separate documents. Cool. So now you know what you're going to do. You're going to make 6 separate documents of color theory. And you can call this project, you're going to put it all into a folder called Project for Color Theory. And I put the models on .ed. Now, I think I'll go through making one of the color wheels, okay? So so that you can see me do it. Okay, so I want these to be made on 11 by 8 and 8.5 letter size. You'll be able to remember that, right? So letter size documents, landscape orientation. So each one is only going to be one artboard. You'll start with, let's start with the RGB one. So you're going to go to RGB color right from the beginning. But if you don't do that, then you can always change the color. And as I showed you, document color mode, but you should really do it right at the beginning. And you can leave everything else the same. I think there's no other settings that you need to change. You can call it right away, RGB color wheel. Okay. Well, at least I solved the problem with my computer overheating. I detached it from the TV and it's not overheating anymore. It's interesting. So I told you that I was going to ask you, I think it helps a lot to put the guides in. So go view, rulers, show rulers, or go to rulers and say show. So down here, rulers, show rulers, and I'm going to draw a vertical axis. So we know it's 11 inches, so 5.5, right? 5.5 is the middle that way, and we'll go down 4.25 because we know it's 8.5 this way. So you've got this guide. Then you're going to draw a circle. So you can decide how big the circle should be. I'm going to go to the ellipse tool. We did this in the first project, remember? So I'm going to hold shift when I make the circle and pull a circle. You should put one point on it so you can see the darn thing. And then go and say how wide you want this to be. So you could, I think typing it in is the best way. So I just said the width should be 5 and the two are constrained, the width and the height are constrained to each other. So the height should be the same. So this circle is 5 inches in diameter. And I'm gonna move it into place, put it right in the middle here. And the way, do you remember how to rotate around a circle? I'm gonna make another circle that's just touching it. And it's your own choice now. It's your own design as far as how big these circles should be. But I don't think they should be too big because you have to write the recipes on it too. The only place I want you to label the colors is in the color wheels. So you're going to, and then what you do is you go to the rotate tool and you choose the rotate tool, which is in the toolbar. It's the little tool that goes left, and double click on the middle and it brings up the tool options. And come on, bring up the tool options. It should bring up the tool options. Oh, you have to hold option. Hold option, and by the way, I put these directions into .ed as well. So I put them in, you will find them in .ed, the directions for rotating around a circle. Okay, so, yikes. So Then, if you remember, we put 360 degrees, because that's the number of degrees in a circle, over how many times you want to rotate it. And there's 12 colors on the color wheel. So you know that you need 12 of them. And then instead of pushing OK, click copy. And then to copy all the way around, some of you already know this, if you're on the PC, say Control D, and if you're on the Mac, say Command D. I mean, put that command in. So Command D or Control D. And there you have the structure of the color wheel. Now at the end, I took off the stroke on the outer circles, and I adjusted them too a little bit, each one. And there is, interestingly enough, they're not grouped, which I find really interesting, because you'd think that this function would group them the way the blend tool does, but it didn't. It doesn't. Anyway, so I'm making my color wheel. You can do the CMY one the same way. And then I'm going to start filling with color. So you will have the sheet that you can get off of .ed, and I'm using, I'll show you here, a sheet that I printed out, but it's a different one because I actually took the recipe for the colors for a different one, but I still can do it from this sheet. And the RGB, for instance, this color on top, and you're going to get a sheet that gives you the recipes, is 255,000. So 255, and then this will be 0, and this will be 0. So wait a second. It's interesting. Oh, there it goes. It didn't go right away. Then the next one it says is orange, and the recipe for that is 255, 125, 0. And so forth. You keep going all the way around using the recipes. The next one it says is yellow, 255, 255, 0. So you'll be watching the sliders and actually see them move. And it's pretty interesting in both the RGB and the CMYK one, how this happens. So then I want you to, no, this was 255, sorry. Yeah. And so forth. You go all the way around. What I did when I made this was I put the primary colors in bold and a little bit bigger so that it looked good. And I put the other colors a little bit smaller and not in bold. But you can design it however you want. So I'm just showing you how I did it. Then at the end, I want you for each of them to draw in the triadic relationships. And the way I did that was I went click, click. I just used the pen tool. And of course, I don't want there to be a fill, but I do want there to be a stroke. So every time I did it, I just used the pen tool and I changed the stroke size. So with the first one, which shows the 3 primaries, sorry, I made it a little bit, I made it 3 points. And then all the other ones, I'll show you how I did them. I put these on another layer because I was afraid of having those as I drew them on the same layer, and I locked the bottom layer. So then I did the next one with the pen tool, and I made the stroke only one, because all the other relationships are not going to be between, oh, did I change it? Yeah, sorry, I still had it selected. So, whoops, yeah. And then this, go one over from red, and then go one over, and I just kept on, and one over, and back to the origin. So I just drew all those triangles in. So are you all watching? So that was easy. I just did it with the pen tool, and it shows the triadic relationships. I'm not having you do any scales that are triadic, but when you do your final project, you'll be doing a triadic version of it, color study. So you'll do it by looking at the recipes on the sheet that I put on .ed. Or if you can't find them, I'll email them to you, but they're on .ed in this week's section. What I did when I put the title in, just in case you want to see, is I pulled down with a guide to 1 inch, and I pulled over with a guide to 1 inch. And then right here in this space, I typed in, and I used a typeface that's simple. You could pick one. I used Optima because I love it, but you could use maybe the default on, well, the default on my computer is Myrid Pro, but it actually looks pretty nice. And I'll call this RGB color wheel. And then all the big type that I used in this, I put it over the primary colors too. I made, whoops, come on, 18 points, and I made it bold. So all my titles, and also I made this cyan, let's see, cyan, or no, red, this is red, blue, and green over here. This becomes green. I made with bigger type or darker type, and you'll see that in the model. Okay, so I'd keep going around with the recipes. Then you're going to, when you put the recipe here, I'll do the green one. You're going to take the type tool, and whoops, that's not the green. That's not going to be green. The green one is going to be down here. So I drew guides so it would make it easy for me. I just drew a guide so that each one looked neat on the left and the right. So I just pulled down guides so that I would have something to make it line up when I put in the type. So when I put in the type. So for instance, right here is green. I'm looking at my chart. And so I'm going to type green, and I'll do caps lock. And then I hit return, and I put in the recipe. So in this case, it's 0-255-0, or no, yeah, 0. So that's the recipe for green. And I want you, for just the color wheels, to put in all the recipes. And the title of the wheel right here. Or the title of whatever you're doing. The title of the scale, the title of the wheel. Whichever one you're doing. So I'm going to do one more. Because I want to show you how to do those chromatic value scales, because I don't think you're going to you're going to have a problem. Everybody always does. So I'm going to do one for you. So make sure that these are all, every document's going to be the same. It's going to be a landscape orientation letter size document. Oops. Okay, with this one, you're going to do exactly the same thing. That's the only problem with doing 6 different documents. But you're going to go to View, Rulers. You have to set that up every time. But it was the only way I could figure out that you could make one that wasn't CMYK. So you're going to say Show Rulers again and pull those guides so that you have something to go with. And then you're going to make a blend. And maybe you want to pull some other guides just so you can put your blend in the middle. I put one at 2, and then I'm going to put another one at 9 so that I can put my blend, so I can put, I'll show you why you need that. And I'm going to go to the rectangle tool and make, there'll be 2 up here and 2 down there. So you sort of space it out. You can later, so make your swatches about, I guess 1/2 inch would be good. So 1/2 inch, like that, and then pull a copy of that. And so you're going to hold Option and pull another one across. And if you don't have your smart guides up, you can align these. So I'm going to align them. The moment you choose 2 things, you can align them in Illustrator. So I want to align them to like the bottom, just so they look good. And then I'm going to go, this one is going to be white, and it has a white fill already. And this one is going to be black. And then, I don't know if I taught you this already. I don't think so. I've taught the other class because they had to use it for something else. But you're going to double click on the blend tool, which is right next to the eyedropper if you have your tools in a double arrangement, double column, and right under the eyedropper if you have it in a single column. And you're going to go to the blend options, and I hope everybody can see this, but the blend options, you're going to say specified steps, not smooth color, specified steps. And then you're going to count how many you need between the first one and the second one. In this case, we know that we need 11, okay? So all of your scales are going to be 11. So you're going to put 9. You're going to change that default number to 9 and say, okay. And then all you have to do, you don't even have to select. You're just going to click on the first one and click on the second one, and you get your blend. It's a lot easier than painting it, isn't it? Now, what I did was I took the stroke off of this, except for the first one, because I thought it looked more elegant. So, and you can't see the white one unless you take the stroke off of it. So before I did that, I'm going to copy this down because I've made a structure now that I can use for the other 3. So I'm going to hold Option and copy this. And actually, I don't want there to be an irregular arrangement of these. I want them to be all, so I'm going to hold Shift and pick all of them. And then I'm going to go up here again and say Distribute on Center. And that'll mean that they'll all arranged. So I have to find the Distribute on Center, Vertical Distribute Center. So there. Now you're going to use this as the structure to create the chromatic value scales. So what you have to do is expand these and start to do them again. Expand and ungroup. So every one that you're working on, just expand and ungroup. So you can say Object, Expand, and then say yes, Object Fill Stroke, yes, and then ungroup. And now you can start to do the scales, and you have to do that to every single one of them. So now you have to decide which one of these do you think cyan, for instance, would be at. You know, where do you think cyan goes? And you might have to try it a few times before you actually hit the spot where the cyan goes. Now, of course, there is a PDF. I made one already for you, so there is something to follow, but I'm going to go to my cyan and I'm going to put it in step 5, let's say. So I put it there. Then you're going to have to create this blend, okay, and see if it looks right. Or before you do that, go to Edit, Colors, and take a look. Well, you have to select the thing you want to change. So say Edit Colors, not Edit, sorry, Edit Colors. So it's under Edit Colors, and you can say Convert to Grayscale momentarily. And notice, see this one that you just made with the cyan in it, is it the same color as this one above it? You want it to be, because this is the correct grayscale. So you can decide, is that the same color? And it looks like it's pretty good. So I'm going to go back and say Command Z, and it goes back to blue, to cyan. So that looks like it's at the right spot. Some people put it at this spot instead. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go back to your blend tool, and you're going to say, I want there to be between white and blue 1, 2, 3, 4 different swatches. So put in 4, leave it at specified steps, and say okay. Now watch this. You go boink, and you get the tints. These are called tints, the mixed with white values of a hue, and these are called shades, the mixed with black values of a hue. So tints and shades, and you're going to be creating that for CMY, all of those hues. Those are the primary hues of the CMY. For every single one of these pages or documents of your CMYK, CMY color wheel, your color value correlation chart, all your value scales are all going to be done in CMY, okay, CMYK. All of these are going to be done in CMYK. So the next one, this is the tricky part, and that's why I wanted to show you this one. The other ones, the complementary and analogous scales, you can just click at the beginning and click at the end, and you'll get the whole scale. But this one has 2 parts. If I try to click on this end one and go to the black, it sees it as a group. It thinks you want to blend the whole group with black. It doesn't read it as an end swatch. So you have to expand and ungroup this whole thing before you can make another blend here. So I'm going to say object, it's already selected, say object, expand again, and then object ungroup. And now you can actually click away by holding command. Every tool becomes the selection tool. So if you hold command on the Mac or control on the PC, every tool becomes the selection tool that you just left off at, either the white one or the black one. So you can, that's another shortcut. So I'm going to click on the end one, and it's now ungrouped. So the program reads it as a unique swatch. So I click on the end one. Oh, now I have to decide how many do I want in between. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I make sure, go to my blend tool and double click so they bring up the options and make sure that it has the right number there. Okay. And then I click on this one and I click on the end one and I get the blend that I wanted. And I mean, if you want, you can ungroup that. The reason for ungrouping these again, like for instance up here, would be if I click on the whole thing, it's still a blend. So I go object, expand, and then say okay, and object ungroup. And the reason for doing that would be that you could then select all of these end ones and say, I don't want a stroke on it. So I'm going to say no stroke. I think it actually just is, this is just aesthetic. If you have to leave the stroke on because you don't feel like doing these extra steps, fine. But I think in the end, it looks nice to have a stroke on the white and no stroke on the others. And I did that for every single one I made. So when I first started doing the color wheels, they each took me about 45 minutes because you have to type in the recipes also. And these took a while too because I had to put the color at the correct place. If you're having trouble with this, you might want to send them to me to okay. Illustrator files are really small. So you can send it to me as an Illustrator file. Each page is separate if you're having trouble with it. Or, you can make it you can export it as a PDF and send it to me as a PDF. I don't care. I mean, if you just want me to look at it. But what I would do here, this part is still a group, right? So I have to expand and ungroup it. I mean, if I want them all to be separate, I already did that. Come on. Ungroup, that's what I wanted. And then I can select these with my black selection tool, draw a marquee around them, and take the stroke off if I want. So they look, it starts to look a little bit more elegant that way, I think. But that's just a style thing. I mean, that's just to make it look good. Basically, what I want you to understand when you do these, and it looks like these still have a stroke on them, is that your cyan is going to go to a different place than your magenta, and then your yellow. Now, if you didn't know if this was right or not, you could again select it and do that grayscale thing to see if this looks like this, and it should look identical because you put the color at the right place. Does that make sense? Some of you are nodding. Let me see everybody's face here. Okay. Any questions? Raise your hand. No, Raina, I see you shaking your head. A lot of the people have sort of checked out, so maybe they've started to do this. I thought I would give you a little time to start it. You're going to make 6 documents, right? And you're going to start the CMYK. You might have to go to .ed to start getting the documents off of .ed. You can download them onto your own computer, I think. You should be able to do that. So it may take us, I mean, I hope that you can get this done in 1 week. It's not that hard. It should take you, you have lots of time, right? You're all at home, so can't really do it much else. So this will keep you occupied for the week, 5 hours of homework, I think. It took me about, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes, the color wheels and the color value correlation chart. And then once I got the swatches going, the swatches, the scales only took another hour. So the whole thing should take you about 5 or 6 hours. Then next week, we could start the final project. So we will look at if you don't get it done, if you're digitally not so inclined and it's going to take you more time, you can take another week for it if you're having a lot of trouble with this.
Where do we find the recording you just did right now of this?
Well, I think I'm going to have it on my laptop, but they also give me them on the cloud if I had put cloud. But this time I wanted to see what happens, so I recorded it to my laptop. So it's probably sizable, right? So I need to, I don't know if I record it to the cloud, whether it automatically puts it on the Arts Center website. So because I don't know that, I guess I'll try to post it to .ed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's best if you post it. maybe compress the file and post.
The file is always pretty big anyway, but we'll see. I put 2 sheets of instructions, not just the models that I made, but I also put how to rotate around a circle. I wrote out the instructions for that. And I also wrote out the instructions for how to make a value scale. So those 2 documents are also on your .ed this week, under this week. Cool?
Yes.
So the other thing that's on .ed under this week, I'm going to show you. Oh. Is the project sheet. So here's the rotating around object around a circle, mixing scales with Illustrator blend tool. And here's the color wheels project sheet. So it'll look like this. So I did try to include some directions. You know, when this whole thing happened, I was like, uh-oh, I'm gonna have to type out directions. So here they are. So values, well, this is the title of the project. I think I showed you this earlier, but project 4, 30 points. Yeah, introduction to color theory, color wheels, color value correlation chart, value scales, complementary and analogous scales. Materials, Adobe Illustrator. Assignment, using Adobe Illustrator and instructions given by instructor, create CMY color wheel, RGB color wheel, color value correlation chart, gray value scale and chromatic value scales, complementary mixing scales, and analogous mixing scales. You might want to do the RGB one first because you know that you're going to do that in RGB, and then go right to the CMY one and keep it in CMY for the other, all these. And then I said, please use the CMY color wheel for the color value correlation chart and all your scales. Yeah, I actually think, is this a word? I will change the order of these, but you can change the order of them yourself, okay? You know what I need. You can call, you know, when you hand in your files, just name them, what they are, and they all have to be all of these are the names. And then in Illustrator, go to File, Document, Color Mode, CMYK to color. It tells how to do that. For the RGB wheel in Illustrator, go to File, you know, it tells. I try to include as many instructions as possible. If you run into problems, you can always email me. Samantha, can you think of any problems?
I think you spelled out everything pretty well, so it should be simple enough to replicate.
Yeah, I mean, when you're replicating it, it's quite interactive. You're actually going to see the colors make themselves, and it's pretty interesting. So I think the ones that you'll use the most, being graphics, illustration, and ad, are probably the CMY. So it's probably best to start with RGB and then go shift into CMY to do a color wheel, and then just stay in CMY after that.
Okay.
Could you email me the link to so I can access Adobe Illustrator?
I definitely will. And I think I have to find where Wendy wrote it to me, but if I can't get it, she just sent that. So like a couple of days ago, so I should be able to find it quite easily. If you were in Pasadena, Art Center is actually lending out laptops also. You know,
Weird.
yeah. But you left, I guess, before you knew that. Yeah. But if you're around Pasadena and you need a laptop, I got one for somebody in the other class, or I recommended that she talk to her department because Wendy said, you know, they were having a little bit of problem with communications, just like my department's integrated studies. So it's basically foundations. So that she didn't want to be conflicting with the departments, you know, to organize this, because it's the same thing when you are, if you have to go pick something up at Art Center, and I think they're letting students go to their lockers now too if you left something at Art Center, but you have to go with a guard. So this week, next week is week 11, and then it's week 12. And I used to have all the swatch scales due in week 12, which, you know, really wipe people out because you have basically 2 weeks to do all that, and we were a week behind anyway. So this you should be able to do in 1 week. But if you can't, if you're finding yourself just grappling with it, I don't think it's going to be that hard for most of you. I mean, yesterday there was a super adept fine art student in my class, in my design class, and he did this all in like, right after class ended at 7 o'clock, I got an email from him with everything. So he just blasted through it, but he's super, you know, good on the computer. I think he did the whole thing in 2 hours. But, you know, again, I think he really likes Illustrator. I mean, I would imagine that this will take you at least 3 hours. And if you're not good with the computer, it might take you 6. But it should just really show you some color theory. Expect a vocabulary list. I'm writing this down so I don't forget it. I'm going to get the link for you guys for the programs. And for everybody else, I'm going to be sending color vocabulary list. Because I always hand that out in class, and I think it'd be good for you to know it, to see it right away. Because what are complementaries across the color wheel? What are analogous colors next to each other? What is the triadic relationship? It's that triangle that's formed. There are always 3 primaries on every color wheel. The secondary colors are mixed from the primaries, but we're not doing secondary mixings. I mean, we're not showing that, except by actually making the colors of the color wheel. So like if you were to mix like cyan and magenta, what do you get? You know, those are primary mixings that generate secondaries. We're doing complementary and analogous to show the different, such different relationships. Next time, so you're going to be sending these to me, but you don't have to do it. I don't know, if everybody did it at the same time, it would be pretty awkward. So you can, when you get it finished, I would imagine you can just put them all into a folder, compress it, and send it to me. I don't think it's going to be that big, so you probably can do that as an email. But if you can't do it as an email, do it through WeTransfer. We've used that site before, remember? I'm pretty sure you can just email it to me, because I think you can email up to 20 megabytes these days, and Illustrator files aren't very big. But if you have trouble with it, it won't send. Do WeTransfer. Go to WeTransfer and just drop it, drop the compressed folder into WeTransfer. And then next week, I'm going to start introducing the final project. We also at next week are going to look at the other 4 projects that haven't been handed in. So we'll start the same way. Okay, we'll start by talking about the project, the grayscale paintings that have not been handed in. And then maybe I'll show a few of your projects if I get them and they look really good. You know, we'll just flip through them. They're all going to be pretty much the same. And then I'm going to start with an introduction of final project. and send you put some handouts up on .ed and send you some things that you have to start thinking about. And I'm going to let you draw for a little while. We're going to start doing the final project, which involves drawing some motifs and, go through the process. I think it would be good for the final project to finish a bit early, because on the last day, we're going to have to do our own presentations of this, and I'm going to have to organize it. So it would be great if you could hand them in a week early so I can organize the whole thing. It's going to be more difficult than you're just going to a computer and showing the class. I'm going to have to organize them and you show them on my shared screen while you narrate it. So it'd be great to have the final project done by week 13 so I can organize this for show for the week after. Okay.
That sounds good.
Yeah. So it's now 10, or I have 5, I think I made this end at 6, but I don't think they kick you off. But in case this whole thing just ends all of a sudden, I think I've done everything that I plan to do. Keep an eye on your email, because that's my only way of communicating with you right now. So it's really important that you check your emails. I'm going to turn the recording off because I finished the tutorial. So stop, pause, stop.